So tonight, I want to finish up with three of, you could call them more advanced workflows, but, common questions I get on these three workflows a lot. So, and they're all relatively simple, but I'll go through a case for each one and hang around at the end if we have any questions about any of the three. We'll certainly answer them for you. So we're going to talk about copy dentures. We're going to talk about um, partials, and we're going to talk about locator or overdenture in general. So I'm going to show you how I do those cases, and then I'll finish with a three or four slides showing how I do a two-appointment conus, which could easily be a locator as well. So let's start with the copy denture workflow. The copy denture workflow is one that's used if the patient says, I'd like a new denture, but I'd like it exactly like this one. Or if the patient says, I'd like a copy or a backup. Those are the two most common ways for copy denture workflow. But you could also use it, like I had a prosthodontist who did his own wax up, did a lot of carving and shaping and festooning in the wax. And he took an impression wash in that wax up, and I used the copy denture workflow to go ahead and make the denture from his analog wax up. So that was a pretty unique use. And there are various other workflows in the implant workflows. It's just a good, simple workflow. And what it does is it analyzes a scan of a denture, and it has to be a 360 scan. It has to be a watertight scan to do this, and it will virtually separate the teeth from the base unless you just want a quick monolithic copy. So for like a surgical denture or something that we need in a hurry, the workflow is exactly the same. The only thing different, if I just want a monolithic copy, I just don't select any material for the teeth, and it goes right through. It takes like two steps, and then boom, you have a copy. You can print out that copy, in something clear or tooth colored, to use as a maybe surgical guide or something like that. But let's talk about traditional, and I will start by selecting the teeth that we're restoring. So this is going to be an upper denture. And I'm going to go to gingiva. And over here is where we're going to divert. We're going to change from gingiva all the way over to this fourth button, and it's called literally copy dentures. And that's all we have to pick. We don't have to pick anything else over here because I'm typically using the Lucitone resin. That's the resin it automatically selects, but the type is a copy denture. Now, again, if I just want a monolithic copy, then I don't select teeth. But if I am doing this for a patient and it is a true copy, then I'm going to go up here and do the same thing I always do, and that is select artificial tooth and select what material settings I want. And I do that by selecting a library. And again, I'll pick the Dentsply library. Now, I don't have to do anything about bridging the teeth. We'll do that in a second in the copy denture workflow. It's in a following step, not here in the setup step. This, in essence, is all you have to set up. The gingiva, the fact that it is a copy denture, and select what tooth material or tooth library. I could have selected PMMA or anything here. So I'm going to enter this as a model. If if I put the denture in the scanner in the lab, I'm still going to call it a model. If the doctor scanned it with the impression one, I'm still going to call it a model because it is literally just a copy. So we've set the case up. We go okay. Let it do its thing. And then we'll go import the scan. So here's the scan of the copy denture. And it could have a wash impression in it. It doesn't have to be just the denture. If the patient said, I want it just like this, but I want it to fit better, then we ask the doc to do a wash impression. And they want to make sure that before he scans the copy denture or the patient's denture with the wash impression, that he trims back the buccal surface. So to make sure there's no impression material covering the teeth, because it's important for a 3Shape to see those teeth to be able to do the copy workflow. don't think this one has a wash impression, but if it does have a wash impression, it just means a little bit more time of cleaning or smoothing the gingival area where the overflow of impression material is. But the Copy Denture workflow allows you to do all that smoothing. So we're ready to design our Copy Denture. And again, it's not a lot of designing. The designing that we do will be primarily in the gingiva, but we'll take a look at the teeth a little bit and do a couple of things maybe. All right, as always, the first thing is occlusal alignment. And you notice it didn't ask for an opposing or anything. So I'm going to set with points like I typically do. Some people set from plane or set from view, but this works for me. Chat. All right, I have one in the room that says they're not hearing sound. If everybody else is hearing sound, just send a little quick note in the chat. All good. I would assume I would have been getting text messages or phone calls. All good. Okay. All good. All good. All right. So occlusal plane is set. Then I'm going to go next. And if I wanted to change the scan of the denture now, I could. And I don't really do a lot in this phase. Sometimes if like here, the denture's pretty worn and I can't really see a gingival margin, like here on the lingual, I could, if I wanted to come in here and use my sculpt tool to, take a little of that off to kind of define that. But that is really not necessary. And I'll show you why as we get into it. But other than that, there's not much I would do here. This is where it really starts. And so the first thing it wants me to do is identify the teeth numbers and position. So if you will look over to the left side where it says segmentation, and there'll be the diagram of the tooth arch, and there'll be a small arrow to the outside of the tooth it wants me to identify first. So it's saying, please click on the top of tooth number 2. So I go right in the middle of the groove. And so I've identified that one. Then notice that the arrow moves and it changed here in the annotations to tooth number 3. So I continue on. And now if you have a denture that's missing a tooth, right? Maybe it fell out or it's a partial, you just hit the skip button. Right? If it's asking you for tooth 5 and I don't have a tooth 5, then I hit the skip button and it'll jump to tooth 6. If you don't, the next screen will look a little wonky. But this patient has all the denture teeth in place, so I'm just going to click on around right on the middle of the incisal edge or right in the center of the occlusal groove. 13, 14, and 15. All right, once I've identified all the teeth, then we'll go next to what's called segmentation. And so what it's doing now, it's analyzing those teeth and it's trying to decide where the margin of the extractions or the separation would be. It's looking to say, where's my line of separation between tooth and base? And the clearer the margin line is on the denture, the easier it is at 3Shape. This is also where I will identify how I want the segments segmented. And like my traditional dentures, I will typically segment in 3 segments. So it's called group teeth in the Copy Denture workflow. So I'm going to click on that 3 segment block and you'll see the lines change a little bit, but obviously they're not ideal and I need to clean them up. So there's a couple of ways to do that. My favorite way is just using the pencil. And so I'm going to click on that first tool and you notice that one of the segment turned red. And so that's the one I'm working on now. And now I'm just going to kind of clean these lines up a little bit of where I'd like that demarcation line to be. And you can spend as much time on this as you want, but you got to be thinking about where the gingiva tooth interface will be, and that's kind of what you're looking for. Now, here's the only area you have to be really careful of, right? Those two lines, right? The line for that segment and the line for the next segment, if they are overlapping, you'll get an error. So I try to keep them, they're touching. I think it's all right. When you're ready to move on to the next section, just hover over the line until it turns a lighter green and click on it, and it'll turn red, and you can work on that one. Now you can, obviously that's not right. You can also, in the bottom left of my screen, you'll see the edit lines. You could turn on the spline points tool, right? And now I have a typical spline, a 3Shape spline, and I could drag things, right? I could add a spline. But in this case, drawing freehand works pretty well for me. Draw the worst line ever. These two molars kind of blend together back there, don't they? All right. You could clean that up as much as you want. But if I don't get an error here, and the errors that will pop up are typically due to the splines touching or crossing. And if I don't get the error, then we're good. And it'll give me a proposal. So we're in the first phase of the proposal. And I mean, you can see that the tooth segment's going to be a little thick here. So what I'm going to do is in Sculpt Anatomy, I'm going to work on these tooth segments a little bit and just draw back those embrasures. I like to use the morph tool, for getting that done a little quicker, but I want to get precise. I'll use the wax knife tool to get in here and cut it a little bit more. You can also use the smooth tool. Or turn the ginger off so I can see what I'm doing here. And I could cut this off some more. Just making a little bit more room for the virtual wax up to fall in place. Remember, if the patient wanted it exactly like their others, then it's not my goal here to make this a perfect denture or a brand new denture for them. My goal here is just to make it a better denture by using better materials. But all right, so just a little removal, a little smoothing down. And once I'm happy with that, I can move forward to the denture base and, work on that a little bit. This is where I would spend, a good portion of my time to make sure that, I don't leave it short or, I can always bring back her denture too, right? I can bring back the full denture and see where I am. I certainly have all the wax tools available on this gingiva that if I wanted to add some more root eminence or some more cervical roll, I could. But remember, that's not what she had before. But I certainly could do it. And I try to dress it up a little bit, but and I don't want the denture base to be too super thin. All right, so that is pretty much it. Now, had there been impression material, right, then I would have had to clean that up on that denture model or modification screen. But otherwise, if this is a true copy denture, then I'm done. If it's lucid on digital print, then I still have, one other thing to do in this phase, and that's to put those T-bars on there under the attachments. And, those are always fun, but um, ooh, always like view. No, it didn't work. That's the thing about this tool. I never can understand 3Shape's attachment tool, but lots of options here. And once you get used to this, it's pretty simple. So I'm going to get it positioned where I want it first, and then I scale it in to fit. It's something I need to go back and do. Add this second T-bar right quick. I gave up a long time ago trying to get the T-bar to drop in an ideal position. Just learn that you just got to position it. Talk with 3Shape about that, and it's more, about the attachment moving tool than anything else. So I noticed that it got a couple of teeth poking through. So just to be safe, I think the manufacturing, pre-manufacturing calculations would take care of that. That's not too much, but I will typically look at this in the beginning to see if I need to do this.
Okay, I added look at this.
Siri just always trying to help me. So I'll get the bulk of it morphed down and get my smooth tool. That rest right there. Double check to make sure I didn't get into the aesthetics of the denture. All good. And we're good. Now it's time to let 3Shape calculate the coupling mechanism. Remember, same thing as in the regular denture. This little gear shift here, it's going to make sure that that segment can seat okay. If it can, it jumps to the next section, the anterior. And if it's good, click next. Yep. And then finally, pre-manufacturing. And we complete it. I mean, that's the beauty of the Copy Denture workflow. It is a pretty quick procedure. The challenges with Copy Denture come in play when there's not a clear definition between tooth and denture base. If it's a really old, worn down denture, right, and it's too smooth of a transition, sometimes 3Shape really struggles with seeing that and generating the separation. So drawing the lines around the segments can be a bear sometimes if you can't see that. That's why I will sometimes take that modeling tool and kind of create me a little margin, on the scan of the denture. And then it's like everything else, we'll generate our cam and take a look at this. So So everything looks pretty good. So all STLs now ready for printing and you're done. That's as easy as a Copy Denture can get. All right. Making good time. Let's move towards the partial. So Bluestone Digital Print is certainly not a flexible partial, but it's a good alternative to traditional acrylic partials, temporary partials, flipper partials, stay plates, some people call them. And the workflow is not to use the partial denture module, but use the full denture module. So we'll start a new case. Let's say it had a case wrong. Pretty sure it's replacing 9 and 10. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. All right. So picking 9 and 10, I'm going to pick my regular denture-based gingiva, Bluestone Digital Print, and I could print a monoblock, but this one, let's go ahead and print, the arch print or base with design teeth. So we're going to print a base and 2 teeth. And I like to still use the Dentsply on the library teeth, and I like to bridge them together. So that's the setup for a two-tooth anterior flipper partial. And it could be an intraoral scan that the doctor scanned, or it could be a model, either one. I think in this case I have a model, but I'm pretty sure I still have the scan too. But the model kind of gives me a little bit more room. So I'm going to use the model. So we click on OK to set the case up. Once it calculates it. So you're clicking whatever teeth you're restoring. That's all you have to do. So wherever and whatever teeth they are, just click those teeth. If they have to be singles, they have to be singles. That's okay. You can print that tooth singly. Import the scan. Oh, yeah, I think this is the one. Yeah, model based. I did it. Okay, so there's the upper jaw. There's the lower. And there's the bite. Yep, that's the one. All right, good to go. So the workflow follows the exact same workflow as a denture does. But obviously, there's a few different things we're setting. Show you what that looks like. So as always, right, occlusal plane, the first thing that it wants to know. So we'll click on 3 points somewhere and see how that lines up. Probably not great, but we'll just do it manually. All right, so here we typically have an edentulous ridge, right? And so it's asking us for a tuberosity. So I'm going to still mark the tuberosity. I'm going to come up here and mark the incisor of the papilla, the other tuberosity, canine point. I'm going to click on the distal of the canine and click next. Again, so think about, I would think about if I had this stone model in my hand, where would I take my red pencil and where do I want the acrylic to be? And so let's draw our spline for our denture base. And let's just come around the teeth. And what you're going to do, obviously, is you're going to engage embrasure retention as best you can. And I want this thing fitting pretty tight to get all the retention that it can. I'm going to work my way around all of these teeth pretty tightly. And then just come around to the anterior where I want my flange, if I want a flange, right? Let's just say, and obviously I don't have a lot of data on this impression, but I'm going to go a little bit over, and you can cut it back when we're finishing it. But I'm just going to give myself plenty of flange there. And depending on how much saddle you want to put back over the tuberosity and how far down you go. Clearly, I don't have the whole palette here, so I am doing a horseshoe. All right, let me just fine tune that, make sure we're not making any mistakes with getting it in the wrong spot. Just smooth that off a little bit on the model. All right. Too far up in there. All right, so this one probably going to be fine with all that retention. I had fewer teeth, and I was worried about having enough retention with just the lingual embrasure retention. We're going to put a wire in this thing, and what I would have done is I would have taken the model and I would have bent the wire first, and I would have put it on the model and scanned the model with the wire on it in place, and then come to this step. And so I'm designing a base over a scan of the wires. It's going to create a little groove. I'll probably block it out a little bit more in the model phase just to make a little bit more room for pickup material. But then we would print the flipper and then cure it, and then just do a cold cure repair step to get the wire bonded. Or I could use a tooth bonding material and light cure through the base because it's not going to be thick. So we've got our boundary drawn now, and now we're ready to move into checking undercuts, path of insertion. And I'm going to look at this, but I'm really okay with, seeing again, some of the yellows, maybe even the light orange undercuts in these areas where I'm going to have acrylic tucked in. But you can see here, there's nothing major there. I'm not worried about any of that. So I'm going to do nothing here and nothing on the adding wax phase. And I want to get all the retention I can. So I'm not adding anything as far as block out goes. All right, we go straight to the tooth phase now. And you pick the tooth mold you like. I picked the Dentsply library, so I'm going to pick the digital portrait, and let's see. I know that's not an 11. Maybe a 13. Let's take a look at that. Yeah, that's pretty close. All right, so I have my two teeth. Move the lower out of the way for a moment. And the fox plane, I don't need that. And so I'll start positioning these teeth in the space to make sure that I'm pretty okay with the mold. I'm probably will tweak it a little bit, but so I'm moving them globally. As you can see on the left, I'm in that global tooth movement. So I'm moving both teeth together. And obviously with this kind of workflow, you're going to be moving more teeth individually, but I wanted to get them in place first. And one of the things I like to do, to make sure that the mold's going to look okay, I will actually go to the individual tool, and just as a kind of a peek, I'm going to put it over here, overlay to that, and just kind of position it in the same position to make sure that I'm pretty happy with the mold or shape I've got. And if I'm not, I can do a little bit of tweaking here to try to get that tooth. Maybe I want to scale it down just a little bit. I could use the morph tool and kind of morph that tooth down a little bit to think. Now, obviously, I've got it reversed, but I'm just trying to get close to the mold. And if I'm close, now I can come back over here and start to get it in a better spot. I always right click, bring it to mirror plane. It brought it back to that midline that I set. And I think that I either got to make a decision to, no, that ain't right. I'm going to butt it up against that tooth a little bit. It's better. And then that same rotation. This one I will bring to mesial. I'm going to have to obviously tweak that out a little bit. Not quite as wide as that other lateral. But I don't like that. So it's just back and forth movement, shaping. And so, all right, it's not perfect, but I think it's established I'm the most okayest technician there is. But talking about workflows here, so let's just say I'm happy with the mold, shape, and position, and I'm ready to go. Always get that error, ignore it, move forward. And it says, okay, you want to redraw your base now? Yeah, maybe. I don't need to come that far out, that far down. Everything else looks okay. Now I will 9 times out of 10 on partials, I will go with the delicate gingival aesthetics. I don't try to put a lot of, festooning, root eminence, cervical roll in these flippers. It's a flipper. And you don't have a lot of room for that anyway, because you see that I set my partials typically at 1.5 to 2, depending on what I think I have for room. Obviously, the thicker it is, the stronger it's going to be. The relief, normally on full dentures and at 0.15, but for flippers, I will take it down to 0.1 because I really want it to fit nice and tight on the embrasures and on the lingual contours. And once we've done those settings, and I'll move forward to the sculpting phase. So again, contacts, connectors, I'm always still going to do the 70, 70, 60, the smallest contact between those two teeth. I just need it to hold it together until I get it bonded. So that's automatic. I have that set in my default. And so now I can work on the tooth some more if I need to. This is where I might bring up the articulator. Yeah, I needed to flare those out some more in my settings because hitting hard there a little bit, but I could take that back a little bit, give me a little more room on the lingual. But other things I might do here, surface anatomy, look at the adjacent teeth, and if there's anything I want to do to, kind of match up to something that's going on next door, a little bit of characterization, soften, smooth that. That lateral's got a big notch in it. Do I want to put a big notch in this lateral too? Anything. And I also know that a printed tooth or a milled tooth, if it's got a little bit of, if I see the mamelons or a little bit of surface texture, it reflects the light better. I don't want to do a lot here, but I'm obviously thinking about everything around it. It was a bad setup job. So the next step would be to sculpt the denture base around my teeth and you're always going to get this minimum thickness. All that red is, that's the 0.1 and the super thin. I just always turn it off. I know it's thin here. So what I'm really looking for is enough depth under the denture base for pockets, a little bit thin here. So I'll probably go back to Sculpt Anatomy and take those teeth down. I'll tell you what. So we did take them down for the last one. Let's leave this one on and see if the drill compensation takes care of that for us. However much you want to do here, come in here and fine tune this wax up. You want to smooth this up a little bit. If you wanted to add some on the back, then you just have to allow sculpting on inner surface, and then I could smooth that up a click or two, but clearly we don't want to do a lot of intaglio finishing. And then, of course, you need T-bars on these as well. So in the Sculpt Denture base is where we do that. And in something this small, I don't believe I can use the T-bar. It's too big a diameter. So this is one I'm certainly using the cylinder and the 2 mm cylinder, global direction, and just it's still following the same principles for the most part. Top 5 mm away from the tooth pockets or from the margin, touching both sides, making sure it's not poking through clearly. And applying it. And then I would do that again in the back somewhere. That's and I like to be overly cautious, so I'm going to add another support or two. What I probably do is stick it here and then connect it to the other bar, maybe all the way to the pallet. Let's see if I can make that work. Yeah, that's something like that, just to give it a little bit more stability during printing. All right, and that's the partial. Coupling mechanism, just like a denture, is going to look at one segment at a time. So there's only one here. It's going to make sure that with the pocket depth I'm asking 2 mm, it can do that, and it will. Glue space still the same, 0.17. So see, there's a little bit of tooth poking through here. So I'm going to have to go back and to Sculpt Anatomy and take that down. We got rid of that area, didn't it? It was just right here. Back to manufacturing, let it calculate. There we go. Nope, still a little tiny piece. Let it fly. You get the idea. Pretty simple. Um, I see a lot of labs printing their flippers this way. And, the main reason is that it's a pretty quick design. And with Lucitone being 2 to 3 times stronger than acrylic, You know, if I can get that, why not get it? So if you got time, if you got capacity, you know, throw those partials in there. Now on the Dentsply website, there are four uh, pre-done designs: a class one, a class two, class three, and class four. Um, you can go to the website, you can download those STLs and print those partials, see how they were designed in 3Shape, you know, to help you as you're moving along. Yeah, I would have gone back and cleaned this up a little bit more on the lingo, a little thick there, but um, at the end of the day, it's an STL file. Now, another cool thing, because it's the denture workflow, um, when we generate our CAM output for the partials, just calculate, I'm going to generate the CAM and then take a look at that. You'll see something that's, you know, I like. There's three files. One of them is a monolithic. So just like in the dentures, anytime you design a denture, you always get, you know, a socket, you get teeth, but you also get, you know, the monolithic. And this hit me one day that, you know, why can't we just print this out of tooth colored material and then use something like easy gum or some sort of pink here? Or if it's a single tooth, you know, quite often you put a single tooth and you just lap it. You don't even show much gingiva at all. And what's the big deal if the rest of this is tooth colored as well? So it'd be strong. It would be easier, right? Just print one thing and you're done. So that's a possibility, but you know, both the files are there. So there's the base with the pockets, and the other file would be the teeth. And you could print or mill, you know, any of these things. Flipper partials. All right. We are at 7:18. I've got just a little bit more time to talk about locators. In reality, a locator is just a denture with two holes in it for picking up housings. There's not a real way to print a denture, you know, that you can take the housings and snap them in. That hadn't been invented yet. It'd be too difficult. It'd be great if, you know, 3D printing could figure out, and maybe the jetted technology will figure this out, is that, hey, you know, we'll put our attachment on this little holder thing and the denture will print all around it. That would be pretty awesome. But right now, what we have to do is just plan ahead and prepare for it. So I'll show you my simple workflow, right? So if I've got a model with locators on it, or if the dentist took a scan in the mouth of locator abutments. Now, I would prefer, if I had the model with the locator abutments in it, to go ahead and snap on the locator scan caps, right? Because the locator scan caps creates the ideal amount of space for the pickup of the housings and with an undercut already built in. So that's the easiest way to generate the holes in the denture. But we don't always have that, right? And the doctor may not have done that. So we might have to do it a different way, and I'll show you how I handle that. So let's see, I think it's a lower locator. So a lower denture. And I'm going to pick, again, the denture base. I'm going to bond teeth in, so arch print, or base with design teeth. I'm going to pick my Dentsply library teeth. And I'm going to bridge these teeth like I always do in 3 segments. And we'll leave these as models and bring in those scans. So the little lock goes away. All right, import scan. Locator, here we are. I had to align these. So lower jaw. Good. Antagonist. And my bite. So this is a lower, typical lower two locator, cuspid, first bicuspid position, posing a natural denture, I think. So now we're ready to design. So the preparation to create the holes, I'm actually doing in the model phase. Right. But like every other denture case, the first place it always starts is the occlusal plane. Right. So 3 dots on the bite and fine tune it. All right. So now I'm going to go back one step. I'm going to go to the model modification. A couple of reasons, right? This was a really, really bad pour or a bad impression. So I want to clean a lot of that up, but I also want to handle these locators. And I'll show you how I do that. So let me smooth up, right, all the anomalies in this model to make my margins or borders a little better. This is really bad, isn't it? Imagine that's really there. All right. So that leaves me with the locators. Now, what I want to do is I want to add to this stone model. I mean, if I could snap on something, whatever. And what I found the easiest way is to go under the attachment tools, and I will go to the parametric shape cylinder. I'll change it to global, and I'll just add a cylinder here, and then I'll start positioning it over that attachment. And I'm going to try to match the position, the parallelism of that locator. Right. And then start sizing it out. How big do I want it? And I can kind of make it semi-transparent so I can see my locator. And, like you think about what ideal, when you take a burr to the inside of a denture, I'm always shooting for about a millimeter of space around it. And you want the hole as parallel to the abutment as you can get it. And if I want to say, okay, where am I can always look at this 2D cross section tool and just go right down in there and measure, right? How much space have I left? Yeah, just over a half a millimeter, about almost a millimeter. Looks like on the outside over here, I got almost a millimeter. So maybe it needs to be a little bit bigger in diameter. And then simply apply it, right? And so it's almost like using a stone template, right? I just modified the model So now when we design the denture over that, that creates that recess. It's big enough for us to pick up the housings. There's another way to do this that might be a little bit more exact. Um, I'm a big fan of desks now. I visited them and I'm really impressed with what they've done and what they're doing. And I had no idea, I was totally unawares that they make a clone of Locator. They call it Desk Lock. And in their DMEs, you can download them free off their website. If we go to attachments and I go to Desk Lock, right? They have a couple of options. Desk Lock housing, right? I can add a desk lock housing right over top of this attachment, right? And dial it in to about the right position angle wise. And apply that. And it will do the same thing. It will generate the space. You can't see it because it automatically turns it down, but see, it generates a space in the shape of a housing. Now, if it's in the shape of the exact housing, right, that's not quite big enough. So it's still going to take me a second to stick a burr in there to open it up a little bit more, right? Because I need room for the bonding resin. But some people like that, and they're of course easier to line up. But I also found they put the little nodule of the button that I have to knock down too. So, um, but it's okay either way. I like my cylinder way, and after this, right, it's moved forward, and we're doing exactly what we've been doing with every denture out there. Right? It's saying, hey, what are the characteristic points? What are my anatomical landmarks? Tuberosity, central ridge point. I'm tuberosity. I'm sorry. Retromolar pad, border for my denture. So these are the same steps that we've done on every denture we've done so far. Just mark the landmarks. The only thing different here is I just prep the model ahead of time. As always, I'm typically blasting through these two screens, nothing here to see, nothing here to do, and move straight to the setting. And pick the highly characterized Genios, go full arch libraries. It suggested this one. Let's apply it and see. So it is a single arch, so clearly there's some setting that needs to be done. And I would go through that whole process of making sure the teeth are in the right spot, making sure the bite's right, occlusion's right. Not going to spend the time here. So I want to make sure I got plenty of times for questions. Nope. Bridge. course, I got to come back and look that up every time. Okay, so that's the idea of that. And so I won't spend any more time with tooth movement or working on the gingiva much. I just wanted to get to the end and show you the finished denture. Make sure those borders are okay. They look fair. The lower's going to be sticking out there a little bit. My goal with the locator dentures, if I feel like I can get the full 3.5 millimeters thickness around those attachments of denture base, then I'm pretty confident with the strength, and I don't think about a strengthener. If because of space or position like this one, I'm going to have to make it thinner, then I'm thinking about some sort of strengthener. And that strengthener could be the pre-bought mesh that you just kind of mash down in place. It could be a mesh that we design on that model first, and then we design the denture over the attachments and the mesh. And then we either mill or cast that. But you can see that I've got, a space problem here, and I'm going to have to be thickening that wax up a little bit. But first thing is, again, connectors. And again, I'm not going to spend a ton of time here because of, we're getting into the last half hour. So I'm going to go through this pretty quickly to get us to the end. When I get to the sculpt anatomy, right, I'm going to say, do I have issues with my teeth, right? In those attachments, I do. So I may do some work on that, right? I may come in here and take the back of that tooth off, just as if I was grinding a tooth in my hand. Right, so it doesn't bump into my attachment. I'll reset the case a little bit to get that tooth a little further out. I think that'll be fine. I think the drill compensation would take care of most of this, but I don't think I'm going to be able to get the 3.5 millimeters thickness. So I'm going to go ahead and give 3Shape a little hand here and take a big chunk of this away and smooth it up. Right back here. The only thing you have to be careful of when you're adjusting those teeth is that green line that's in between the gingiva and the base. So that tooth line, right? I'm always got to be aware of that. If you cut too much of that tooth away, right, then your gingival margin might look a little funny and you have to adjust the wax up accordingly. But if you don't have the room, you don't have the room, right? All right. So, I could do more on the teeth if I wanted to, but for the sake of getting done here, let's go straight to the denture base and see what I have to do here. Well, I'm obviously going to be adding some wax to kind of smooth that transition around those housings out and try to get the strength I can. But there's a limit to this, right? Is it going to be comfortable for the patient? It may just have to be thin. If it has to be thin, then I'm going to put a strengthener in there to help hold it together. let's just move forward. I'm going to forego the T-bars to make a more efficient use of my time here. But all right. Didn't like between the cuspid and the bicuspid. It told me so. But during seating, we can just take a little burr and a little wheel and smooth those down and make sure they seat properly before I bond them in. Still got some show through. So this one's going to generate with the hole in the base, I feel, but it will generate. All right, so you end up with an STL for the base, STL for the teeth, like any other denture, but the base has the recesses for the locator attachment. Then you just go back to your model and you pick it up, and I would always do that on a jig reline press. And you can pick it up with Fuse 2 or cold cure acrylic, or the pickup materials like Voco or easy pickup or chairside pickup material, all validated to stick to loose tone really well. All right, while it's calculating, check the chat box. I don't see any questions in the chat. If anybody wants to enter any questions in the chat, or if you want to unmute your mic and ask, that's fine. Good. Appreciate getting tired. Almost done. So, there we go. We'll close that, generate those STLs. Cut back to that attachment. So yeah, you see how the attachment lifts the little nib that I'm going to have to cut down, but it did create the space. And the monolithic version is there. So I wanted to do that in a prototyping method. And typically, if we're doing an all-on-X on the upper and a locator on the lower, I'll print this monolithic one out just for bite adjustment, tooth position analysis, all that. And there's the pocket denture. And yeah, maybe a little thin back here. Not bad. All right, locator. Pretty simple, right? Just modify the model in the beginning. All right. So the only question I see is there a conus DME? Not yet. Nope, not yet. So let me bring up another. Talk about my conus 2 appointment workflow, which it could be locator as well. Right? If the patient has an existing denture, and we're going to upgrade it to conus or locators, we literally, and the doc has an intraoral scanner, we can literally do this in a couple of appointments. And the workflow is the number of scans, right? So the first thing I ask the dentist to do is do a wash impression. Right. I want the wash impression to be able to see the cover screws. Like if we hadn't ordered the conus abutments yet, right? I want to see where the implants are, but I want to see everything else about the denture. So we do pretty much a full scan of the upper and the lower and the bite, but then we do an additional couple of scans. Right? We put the scan posts in the sites and we scan all of the arches with the scan post. Then we'll take the scan posts out, put the cover screws back in. So that's the workflow, right? Wash impression with the cover screws. Scan the buccal and the bite registration, remove and scan the dentures. Then we put the IO flows, the scan posts in so we can order the Atlantis abutments, take everything back out, put the cover screws back in, send the patient back home with their dentures. So in the CONUS workflow, right, it's all got to be customized. So, but we have those dentures, right? We have the data of the dentures. It's fully aligned. So all we do is send those denture scans along with our order for CONUS, and they will get the parallelism right and fit it into the parameters of the patient's denture. But sometimes this is even worth the effort of making a couple of prototype dentures if the patient doesn't have any dentures. If like it's an immediate case, we can make an immediate dentures and use those prototypes to do this same workflow. A couple more appointments, of course, but so we really have all the data we need to go ahead and do the final. I mean, we've got the patient's existing dentures. We could just send the abutments and and adjust the patient's dentures to pick up, but we could also make new dentures, right, from that same data. So like a couple of reference dentures now, we design these two dentures, use that same cylinder tool to create the recesses, and then pick those attachments up chair side or in a jig press, right? But that's, chair side's still my favorite. And that's all done in two appointments, right? The first appointment was scanning the denture, scanning in the mouth with the flows. And the second appointment was delivering a couple of new dentures or retrofitting to the existing dentures. And, it's a pretty simple process of taking those cover screws out and putting in the abutments that were custom made to fit within that parameter anyway. So we don't have any problems there. Seat the caps, make sure the passive fit around the caps, and then pick them up. And we're done. And you can see the retention. This guy really struggles to get it off. It scares everybody when he gets it off, but all we did was coach him up a little bit and watch how easy he gets it off this time. We didn't adjust this at all, right? But we just told him, look, you got to wiggle him a little bit. You can't just monster pull him straight down. So the digital workflow and a couple appointments, and think about that's easily adaptable over to locators, right? We could do the same kind of workflow with locators. We don't have to order custom abutments, but we have to order locator abutments. So we take a workflow that could be 4, 5, or 6 appointments and cut it down to 2 or 3 pretty darn easily using the digital workflow. All right. So let me stop my share and oops. See if there's any other questions that anybody has. All right. Cool. So this session, as all the others, will be recorded and it'll be available. You will get an email from Rebel 3D probably within about a week because we have to edit it and get it all dialed into the format. It usually takes us about a week to get all that done. And I'll try to get it maybe a little quicker since it's the last one, but when you get the email, you go to Rebel 3D, and if you've already done it with the other 3 sessions, you know the routine. If you haven't done it, this is your first, then you'll have to set up an account with Rebel 3D, and it's a free. You go to the course, and it'll say a charge, but your email is what gets you the free access for a year. So you'll have a 1 year's free access to the recording. So if there's not any questions, any more chat questions, let me look. see. Nope. So it was good hanging out with you guys. I appreciate it. Look forward to the next time. I'm currently working on training for ExoCAD. So I've had my license for a couple of months now and dialing in how I want to best lay that out. But I'm most excited about the partial denture workflow in ExoCAD when we're doing a cast metal frame. I still much prefer the 3Shape for full dentures, but it's certainly a usable software and it's got a lot of tools, and those that are either used to it, certainly like it. Other than that, we'll probably cycle back next year, maybe Q2, with sort of the same series. So if you have any input or comments about, what techniques or what workflows or something that maybe I should spend more time on, or what you'd like to see that you haven't seen yet, just let me know as I'm tweaking that and moving, forward to offer more things. I'll certainly build it to what your specs are. And as always, my new firm, I'm here available. Virtual Training 101, or come to your lab and train your techs directly. Uh, if not, I will see you guys at the next show or the next meeting, or you know how to reach me. Thanks for hanging out with me, guys.